The desperate call. The communication array on research vessel Horizon's Edge hummed quietly in the depths of space, 3 light-years beyond the outer rim of human territory. Captain Sarah Chen had grown accustomed to the endless silence that surrounded their small scientific mission. For 18 months, her crew of 12 had been cataloging stellar phenomena in this remote sector, far from the busy trade routes and military patrols that kept most of human space secure. Dr. Marcus Webb, the ship's lead scientist, looked up from his console with tired eyes. The endless stream of cosmic background radiation had yielded nothing but standard readings for weeks. These deep space missions were necessary for humanity's expanding knowledge of the galaxy, but they could test even the most patient researchers' limits. "Captain," Webb called out, his voice cutting through the bridge's quiet atmosphere. "I'm picking up something unusual. It's not natural cosmic radiation." Sarah moved from her command chair to Webb's station, her boots clicking softly against the metal floor. At 35, she had spent more time in deep space than most captains twice her age. Her background in xenobiology had earned her this assignment, though they had yet to encounter any signs of alien life. "What kind of signal?" she asked, studying the wavelength patterns on Webb's screen. "It's structured, deliberate, and it's coming from the Kepler 442 system, about 2 light-years from our current position." Webb adjusted his instruments, and the signal became clearer. "Captain, this isn't random. Someone or something is broadcasting this on purpose." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems. Sarah felt her heart rate increase. Humanity had been alone in the galaxy for as long as they had been exploring it. Radio telescopes had listened for centuries without hearing a single artificial signal from the stars. "Can you decode it?" Sarah asked. Webb worked frantically at his console, running the signal through every translation protocol in their database. Mathematical sequences, prime numbers, basic chemistry, nothing worked until he tried something different. "Captain, it's not trying to communicate with us directly. It's a distress beacon, but it's ancient. The technology behind this signal is incredibly advanced, but the transmission method is old, like it was designed to be picked up by anyone with basic radio capability." Sarah stared at the data streaming across Webb's monitors. The implications were staggering. Not only was there intelligent life in the galaxy, but it was in trouble and reaching out to anyone who might listen. "How long has this been broadcasting?" she asked. "Based on the signal degradation, I'd estimate about 6 months. But Captain, there's something else. The signal is getting weaker. Whatever power source is driving this beacon, it's running out." Sarah made a decision that would change not only her crew's mission, but the entire course of human history. Plot a course for the Kepler 442 system, maximum sustainable speed. Her first officer, Lieutenant Commander James Park, looked up from his station with concern. "Captain, that takes us completely outside our assigned patrol area. Starfleet Command will want an explanation." "Then they'll get one," Sarah replied firmly. "We may be looking at first contact with an alien species. That takes priority over everything else." The Horizon's Edge changed course, its fusion drive pushing the small research vessel toward the unknown. During the 3-day journey, Webb continued analyzing the signal, discovering layers of complexity that spoke to a technology far beyond current human capabilities. As they approached the Kepler 442 system, their sensors began detecting artificial structures orbiting the system's habitable planet. But something was wrong. The structures were damaged, some completely destroyed, and the planet's surface showed signs of massive devastation. "Captain," Webb reported, his voice tight with tension, "I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. There are ships out there, but they're not the same as the ones that built those orbital stations." Sarah ordered the ship to a safe distance while they observed. What they saw defied everything they thought they knew about space warfare. Sleek, organic-looking vessels were systematically destroying the remaining artificial structures. These ships moved unlike anything in human space, flowing through vacuum as if they were swimming through water. "The distress signal is coming from that small moon," Webb announced. "There's a facility there, heavily shielded, but it's under attack." As if responding to their arrival, the distress signal suddenly changed. New elements appeared in the transmission, and Webb's translation protocols finally found purchase. "Captain, it's addressing us directly now. Whoever is down there knows we're here." The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. "Unknown vessels, we are the last survivors of the Zephyrian Alliance. Our worlds have fallen to the Void Swarm. We have held this position for 200 cycles, but our defenses are failing. If you can hear this message, please, we need help." Sarah felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. A dying civilization was asking for help, and humanity might be their only hope. But looking at the massive alien ships attacking the moon facility, she knew her small research vessel was completely outmatched. "Open a channel," she ordered. "Let's see if we can talk to them." The communication took several minutes to establish, but eventually, a holographic image materialized on the bridge. The being that appeared was humanoid but clearly alien, with elongated limbs, translucent skin that showed bioluminescent patterns beneath, and large eyes that seemed to hold depths of sadness. "I am Zera 9, last member of the Zephyrian Council," the alien said, her voice carrying harmonics that human vocal cords could never produce. "Your arrival gives us hope we had thought lost forever." "I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the human vessel Horizon's Edge," Sarah replied. "We received your distress call. What is this void swarm you mentioned?" Zera 9's bioluminescent patterns dimmed, and her expression became grave. "They are ancient, Captain Chen. Older than our civilization. Older than most of the species we knew. They consume everything life, energy, matter itself. They have devoured 17 star systems in our region. We are all that remains." Through the communication link, Zara 9 showed them images of the destruction. Entire planets stripped of their atmospheres, stars dimmed as their energy was somehow harvested, space itself seeming to twist and darken where the void swarm had passed. "We fought them for 50 years, Zara 9 continued. "Our technology, our weapons, our combined fleets from 12 different species, none of it mattered. They adapt to everything we try. They learn from every battle. We can delay them, but we cannot stop them." Sarah looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. These were scientists and explorers, not soldiers. But they were also human, and humans had never been known to back down from impossible challenges. "How long do you have?" Sarah asked. "Our facility's power core will fail within days. After that, the void swarm will finish consuming what remains of our system and move on to the next. Captain Chen, we have tried everything. Our greatest minds, our most advanced weapons, our most desperate strategies, nothing works." Sarah made her second galaxy-changing decision in less than a week. "We're going to help you." Zera 9's bioluminescent patterns flickered with what might have been surprise. "Captain, I appreciate your courage, but you do not understand. Your single vessel cannot." "Maybe not," Sarah interrupted. "But humans have a saying. Impossible just means no one's figured out how yet. Tell me everything you know about this void swarm. Every detail, every pattern, every weakness you've discovered." As the Horizon's Edge moved closer to the besieged moon facility, Sarah knew she was committing her crew to a battle they had no business fighting. But she also knew that if they didn't try, an entire civilization would die, and humanity might face the same fate eventually. The Void Swarm had never encountered humans before. They had never faced a species that looked at impossible odds and saw them as just another problem to solve. They were about to learn what made humanity special in a galaxy full of intelligent life. The real battle was about to begin. The human solution. The next 18 hours aboard the Horizon's Edge were unlike anything the crew had ever experienced. Captain Sarah Chen had ordered all non-essential systems powered down to extend their operational time while Dr. Webb and his team worked frantically to analyze every piece of data the Zephyrians could provide about the Void Swarm. The enemy was unlike anything in human military doctrine. The Void Swarm didn't use traditional ships or weapons. Instead, they were composed of what the Zephyrians called consumption entities, living darkness that could manipulate matter and energy at a fundamental level. They absorbed everything they encountered, growing stronger with each victory. Captain Webb reported, his eyes red from hours of continuous work. I think I understand why the Zephyrians couldn't beat them. Every time they adapted a new strategy, the Void Swarm learned from it and became immune. It's like fighting an enemy that gets stronger every time you hit it. Sarah studied the tactical displays showing the Void Swarm's attack patterns. There were dozens of the consumption entities surrounding the moon facility, each one the size of a human destroyer, but they moved with organic fluidity rather than mechanical precision. What about their behavior patterns? She asked. The Zephyrians said they adapt, but adaptation takes time. What if we could hit them with something they've never seen before? That's the problem, Captain. They've been consuming civilizations for millennia. The Zephyrians shared data from 12 different species, all with different technologies and fighting styles. The Void Swarm has seen everything. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then a smile played at the corners of her mouth. No, they haven't. They've never seen humans fight. Lieutenant Commander Park looked skeptical. Captain, with respect, we're not exactly a warrior species. We've had peace in human space for over 50 years. That's not what I mean, Sarah said, moving to the tactical display. Look at how they attack. It's efficient, methodical, perfect. They analyze their enemy's capabilities and counter them with overwhelming force. But what if their enemy doesn't fight back the way they expect? Webb was beginning to understand. You're talking about doing something completely irrational. Exactly. The Zephyrians fought them like civilized beings using proper tactics, coordinated strategies, logical approaches. But humans, we've never been accused of being too logical when our backs are against the wall. Sarah opened a communication channel to Zara 9. The Zephyrian leader appeared on screen. Her bioluminescent patterns dim with exhaustion and despair. Captain Chen, our outer defenses have failed. We have perhaps 6 hours before the facility's main shields collapse. I fear your offer of assistance, while brave, may be too late. Zara 9, I need you to do something that's going to sound crazy. Sarah said, I need you to shut down all your defensive systems. The alien's large eyes widened. Captain, that would be suicide. The Void Swarm would consume us immediately. Not if we give them something else to focus on first, something they've never encountered before and can't possibly understand or adapt to quickly enough. Sarah outlined her plan, and Zara 9's reaction was exactly what she expected: complete bewilderment followed by growing excitement as she began to understand the audacious nature of what the humans were proposing. This is madness, Zara 9 said. No rational species would attempt such a strategy. Exactly, Sarah grinned. That's what's going to make it work. The Horizon's Edge began broadcasting on all frequencies, sending out signals that made no logical sense. Dr. Webb had programmed their communications array to transmit random mathematical sequences, fragments of human music, portions of poetry, and complex equations that led nowhere. To any rational intelligence, it looked like the ravings of a damaged computer system. But buried within the chaos were very specific commands being sent to the Zephyrian facility. The Void Swarm noticed the human ship immediately. Several consumption entities broke off from their assault on the moon facility and began moving toward the Horizon's Edge. As they approached, their scanning beams washed over the human vessel, trying to analyze its capabilities and determine the appropriate response. What they found confused them. The ship's weapon systems were minimal scientific equipment, not military hardware. Its defenses were standard civilian shields. Its crew numbered only 12 beings. By every logical measure, it posed no threat and could be consumed as an afterthought. But the signals it was broadcasting defied analysis. The Void Swarm's intelligence had encountered thousands of different communication methods, But these transmissions followed no recognizable pattern. They seemed to be random, yet they continued with such persistence that they had to be intentional. As the consumption entities moved closer to investigate, Sarah gave the order she had been preparing for. All stop. Cut main power. Deploy emergency beacons. The horizon's edge went dark and began broadcasting automated distress signals on every emergency frequency. To the Void Swarm, it appeared that the strange ship had suffered a critical failure and was about to be destroyed. But the Void Swarm had learned to be cautious. They had encountered trap strategies before, ships that pretended to be disabled while preparing devastating final attacks. They approached slowly, scanning continuously, ready to adapt to whatever weapon system the humans might reveal. They never suspected that the humans' greatest weapon was their own unpredictability. While the consumption entities focused on the apparently disabled research vessel, the Moon facility quietly began implementing the most irrational defensive strategy in galactic history. Instead of raising their shields and preparing their weapons, the Zephyrians began transmitting their entire cultural database, everything they knew about art, music, literature, philosophy, and individual personal memories. The Void Swarm, programmed to consume and analyze everything they encountered, began trying to process this massive influx of purely emotional and creative data. For beings whose entire existence was based on logical consumption and adaptation, the Zephyrian cultural transmission was like trying to digest chaos itself. But that was only phase one of Sarah's plan. Now, she whispered, and Webb activated the Horizon's Edge's most powerful systems, not their weapons, but their scientific equipment. The ship's sensor array, normally used for deep space astronomy, began broadcasting a focused gravitational wave pulse directly at the nearest consumption entity. The pulse carried no destructive force, but it did something the Void Swarm had never experienced before. It made them laugh. The gravitational waves were modulated to carry the complete audio recording of a human comedy show, translated into pure mathematical harmonics. The consumption entity, still trying to process the chaotic cultural data from the Zephyrians, suddenly found itself experiencing humor for the first time in its existence. The effect was catastrophic for a being whose entire identity was based on logical consumption. The consumption entity stopped moving, its form flickering as it struggled to integrate this new type of information into its understanding of reality. Other entities moved to assist their companion, but Webb was ready for them. The Horizon's Edge's communication array began broadcasting human music, everything from classical symphonies to jazz improvisations to rock concerts. Each transmission was tailored to be as emotionally complex and logically inconsistent as possible. The Void Swarm, evolved to consume and adapt to any threat, found themselves facing something they had never encountered in millions of years of existence: pure, irrational creativity. "Captain," Webb reported, his voice filled with amazement, "it's working. Their formation is breaking up. They're not attacking anymore, they're trying to process what we're sending them." But Sarah wasn't finished. "Zera 9, are your people ready for Phase 3? "As ready as anyone can be for such madness," the Zephyrian replied. "Then let's show them what happens when creativity meets desperation." The Moon facility's remaining power was redirected not to weapons or shields, but to a massive holographic projector that began displaying human art. Paintings, sculptures, dance performances, and theatrical productions filled the space around the facility in brilliant three-dimensional displays. The Void Swarm, still struggling to process humor and music, now found themselves surrounded by visual creativity that defied every logical pattern they had ever encountered. Picasso's Cubist paintings rotated alongside Michelangelo's sculptures. Modern dance performances played out in zero gravity, while abstract art shifted and flowed around them. For beings that had consumed thousands of civilizations by understanding and adapting to their logical patterns, the human approach was beyond comprehension. Every time they began to analyze one element of the creative assault, 12 more would appear, each one completely different from anything they had processed before. The consumption entities began to malfunction. Their forms, usually fluid and adaptive, became erratic and unstable. They had encountered weapons, shields, tactics, and technologies beyond counting, but they had never faced pure, undiluted imagination. "They're retreating," Zara 9 reported, her voice filled with wonder. "The Void Swarm is actually retreating." Sarah watched as the consumption entities pulled back from both the moon facility and her ship. Their forms were flickering and unstable, overwhelmed by sensory input that their logical minds couldn't process or adapt to. "Captain," Webb said quietly, "I think we broke them." The Void Swarm continued their retreat, moving away from the system entirely. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered something they couldn't consume or understand. The logical response was to avoid it, until they could develop new adaptive strategies. But Sarah suspected they would be trying to figure out human creativity for a very long time. As the immediate threat passed, Zora 9's image reappeared on the bridge screen. Her bioluminescent patterns were now bright with patterns that Webb's translation software identified as amazement and gratitude. "Captain Chin, in 500 years of Zephyrian history and 50 years of warfare against the Void Swarm, no one has ever achieved what you accomplished in a single day. How is such a thing possible?" Sarah smiled. "Because humans have something the Void Swarm can never adapt to or understand. We have the ability to be completely, beautifully, wonderfully irrational. And sometimes, that's exactly what the galaxy needs." The rescue of the Zephyrian survivors was only the beginning. Word of humanity's victory over the Void Swarm spread throughout the galaxy, carried by the few surviving members of the species that had encountered the ancient enemy. Soon, representatives from dozens of civilizations were making contact with Earth, seeking alliance with the species that had achieved the impossible. Humanity's entry into galactic civilization wasn't through conquest or superior technology, but through the one thing that made them unique in a galaxy full of logical, rational beings: their unlimited capacity for creative thinking and their refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. The Void Swarm still existed somewhere in the dark spaces between stars, trying to understand what they had encountered. But they gave human space a wide berth, unwilling to face again the chaotic creativity that had overwhelmed their ancient minds. And in the depths of space, the Horizon's Edge continued its mission, now accompanied by ships from a dozen different species, all eager to learn from the humans who had looked at an impossible situation and found a way to turn imagination into victory. The galaxy would never be the same.